It is good to have you back. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining us, this is Firecrackers and we're just about to get started. So I have with me in the studio Ado Destiny, a legal practitioner. Many thanks for being with us on the show.
It's a pleasure, Ray.
And also joining us live from Port Harcourt, we have Ankil Briggs, the convener, Niger Delta Self-Determination Movement. Many thanks for joining us at this time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Happy Sunday.
Okay, all right. So the topic we have with us today is tax ahead of the new ministers, the one that was sworn in just this Monday, almost a week now. Nigeria is in what some people would like to call a mess. Not a complete mess, but we are still trying to figure things out. And then we have 45 new ministers that were just sworn into office. If I might ask, what are your expectations of these new ministers that were just sworn in?
Okay, I'm muted. Really and truly, expectations should be about having the right people in the right place doing the right thing. But right now, all over Nigeria, we're discussing along the lines of not sure that they will be able to do the job. Why do I say so? Because this we have nothing, if you like, to compare. What I mean by that is that we have suffered from the lack of electricity power, and so we all know what that affects. That has gone on from one government to the other. So it is just about the government actually being able to put the right people in the right place. They come along 8 years ago. The power minister, the minister that was put in charge of power, we all heard what he said. We all heard what he said before he came. He was given the ministry, and yet nothing really changed. So, unfortunately for me, as a Nigerian that has been through the past how many decades of this so-called government of for the people by the people, we have really we don't have anything. For me, there is nothing that we're expecting, which is really sad, because then it means that the ministers have to show us what they're made of. What can they do?
Okay, all right, that is noted. Because now let us look at the area of mineral resources. Videos have been emerging online of our minerals being stolen. It's so bad that these workers are getting 1,000 naira a day to mine gold in states like Zamfara. And not only that, we also have issues of crude oil theft. So in these areas of both the solid minerals and then for the crude oil, what advice would you give the ministers in charge of these portfolios?
The ministers in charge of the portfolios to do with the resources of Nigeria. Let us start with crude oil, which I mean, I can speak authoritatively on. Um, since we've been talking about oil theft did not start today. Oil theft has always been there. To the extent that I keep saying, let us ask the people that have been put in charge. We didn't put them there, the government put them there. Who are these people? The people that are put in the creeks where most of these resources are, and on land where most of these resources, gas and oil are. Now, the JTF, the Joint Tax Force, were the people that Obasanjo put in charge to curtail the issue of oil theft. So you can then agree with me, if Obasanjo is actually the one that put them there, you can then agree that it has been going on for over 2 decades. And we are saying that it's been going on for much longer than that. We have not been able to stop, to curtail the issue of oil theft in the Niger Delta. You have to ask the people the JTF, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the police, because it's a joint task force. But what really have they been doing all these years? If you go to solid minerals, it's the same thing. So the ministers in charge have a lot of work to do that their predecessors have not been able to achieve. So they have to be able to show us by what they do, and not by burning the so-called evidence that they are getting, not by setting it on fire, but actually stopping oil theft. And the same goes for the solid mineral. I mean, we have gold and bitumen and so many other things in other parts of Nigeria. And we're hearing that Chinese people are there. Other nationalities are coming in and stealing these resources. So whether it is the resources of oil and gas or the resources of solid mineral, which is actually not on the table yet, there is still theft of resources going on in Nigeria. So whoever is put there has his work cut out for him. He or she will either fail or succeed. But going by what has happened in the past, I think they are more likely to fail than to actually succeed. But we will see.
About vessel burning. This is a trend that has been going on. They catch a vessel laden with stolen crude oil and then they burn it. How do you think that should have been handled rather than causing much more havoc on the environment? What do you think should have been the right thing to do whenever they catch a vessel that has stolen crude oil on it?
The truth of the matter is that stealing of crude oil, whoever it is done by the law, it's a crime. Now, when you find evidence of a crime being committed, you don't destroy the evidence for whatever reason. Even taking the environmental aspect of it, you don't destroy uh, the crude that you claim to have found in the boats by saying what? By saying you need to do that to teach them a lesson. No, you teach them a lesson by taking them to court and giving the evidence to convict them. And part of that evidence that is going to convince Nigerians that you caught them in the act of stealing crude oil is by taking them to court and by showing the evidence. That's one. The second aspect of it is that environmentally, it is actually illegal to set fire to something like crude oil because of the fact that it despoils the environment. So when you purposely do that, you are killing the people in the place that are breathing the evidence that you are burning, and you are destroying the environment, all in the name of we're going to teach them a lesson. We are not the criminals. The people that are breathing these things in are not the criminals. You're letting the criminals go by burning the evidence, and you're letting the criminals go and making us victims of the crime and the results of the crime, which you end up burning. For what? They should not burn the evidence. Now they will say to you that it's the best way. It's not the best way of doing that. You can actually record it by videoing you taking this evidence out, and even if you like, selling it, because it is still sellable. Selling it to people that are buying, to the oil companies that are buying crude oil, and the oil companies themselves are very much aware. If the Nigerian government is not aware, the oil companies are aware, and the oil companies are doing things that they cannot do anywhere else. I mean, do you hear about oil theft in Dubai? Or do you hear about pollution in Dubai? So why are we hearing about these things in Nigeria, in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria? It's because the government does not care about the people and the effects of the environment, and also of the fact that as the government claims, the resources that belongs to them is being stolen.
Okay, all right. What are your thoughts on these 45 sworn-in ministers? Expectations from them?
Ah, it's really a difficult question, and that's because um, for my adult age, as a Nigerian, I have learned one very important lesson, which is to always discountenance or discount my expectations when it comes to issues where you expect Nigerian government to meet the most basic economic deliverables. And having this understanding, I also would want to show some restraints. In other words, I want to give benefit of the doubt. You see, if you look at the trajectory of our history since our return to democracy, we saw Obasanjo's regime and we thought that was the worst, and we expected something better. When we got the Yar'Adua Jonathan administration, we started to credit Obasanjo's administration as bad as it was. When the Buhari administration came on board in 2015, it was like the worst disaster any nation would ordinarily not have experienced. So having this understanding that every government appears to outdo its predecessors in the act of non-performance. As a result, I do not expect so much, but there are credible young men and women in this administration, at least those we have seen in the distance, and then those we've had close relationship with. But all in all, a few portfolios were given as politics of patronage we play to compensate men and women for roles they played in the emergence of the president. But that's how it goes in the world. So I don't expect so much. But that's not to say that we are pessimistic, no. But I am just trying, like every other Nigerian, to especially taking a cue from how the government started. And I want to say this, maybe even though we are off record, what has brought us to where we are today in terms of the economic challenges and hardship we have faced was the president's first speech, which to my mind, I think that his handlers didn't do so well, because if you are coming on board and the first thing you are telling the people is that, yes, we agree that subsidy will go, but that singular statement is what threw the nation into the economic challenges.
But some people have commended the president for his bravery for the declaration of the removal of fuel subsidy on his inauguration.
I want to beg to differ. You see, all over the world, for some of us who have had the opportunities to have seen other climes, governments subsidize almost everything. You can ask, it's a peculiar nation, and as an advice, I think we have gotten to that stage where our leaders should look at homegrown solutions to our peculiar challenges rather than go to climes where things are working to import working ideas that further drag us back into the miseries we are coming out from. Yes, it's an act of bravery to stand and remove subsidy in Nigeria, but you're also aware that in the last few weeks there have been news flying around, which is that the president is reconsidering returning subsidy. I don't know how much sense it makes where you set out billions to be given at the rate of 8,000 to the poorest of the poor. Again, there are no yardsticks to measure who the poorest of the poor are. But if you ask me, some of our distant relations who are in villages who do not maintain an account and have no access to power and networks are part of these people. So how are those monies going to get to them? Again, you took out subsidy and now you are going to give this in form of subsidy. So I think it was too hasty. the president ought to have come in, study the economic flow, and then gradually you would reduce, and gradually you take it out. By the time you are taking it out, finally, you would have had other palliatives, other buffers, you know, that would serve as a kind of a rescue for those who will be worse hit. But the way it was done was tragic and it's regrettable.
Okay. Do you feel that the removal of fuel subsidy could anyway hamper the task of the newly inaugurated or the newly sworn-in ministers?
There are a couple of things that can hamper the capacity of the performance of the ministers. And I want to digress a little, and then I will come back to answer the question. Over the years, there is something that has been very consistent. You know, there is a language that is common to an era of this state, of this magnitude, each time we pass through every 4-year cycle, which is padding. Who are those that are associated with padding budget? They are those who sit, you know, to approve the various ministries' budget. Here is what is going to happen. If you are unwilling to play ball with those who will sit to ratify your budget, if you present a budget of, say, 50 billion to spend on road construction, reconstruction, and maintenance, if you do not allow them add theirs, because they also have things to them they believe should be dividends to their respective constituencies, they are going to give you, say, 2 billion. So 2 billion to a 50 billion. In other words, they are going to tie your hands while leaving you to work free. In the end, you are not going to be able to do anything. In translation, that is what removal of subsidy again has done. Now, I don't know how the ministers would want to deliver to dividends of democracy to a people whose fates and daily struggle is essentially on how they survive. So it's neither here nor there. The removal of subsidy has thrown us into avoidable trajectories and miseries, and if nothing is done, I don't think there is a plan to move this nation forward. But it's too late to say. But from what we have seen, I am a bit restrained. I'm a bit restrained to want to put hope in this class of ministers. So to answer your question directly, yes, removal of subsidy in virtually all ways would hamper the capacity of each and every of the appointed ministers to do their jobs.
Okay. All right. And now back to Anki Briggs. It's not a secret when people say that perhaps some of the people that got sworn in as ministers or were even nominated in the first place, that it was just like a gift for their loyalty to the president rather than their capacity to do the job. Do you agree with that point of view?
Well, quite honestly, there cannot be any secret about how politics works in Nigeria. Um, if you run for governorship, for instance, and you don't get the ticket, excuse me, either you don't get the ticket from your political party, or you are asked to stand down from your position, then you're given something in return. Going by the experience of the Niger Delta people, something like the NDDC, something like the Ministry of Niger Delta, has been used for that purpose. Why do I authoritatively say so? I authoritatively say so because I know what we did, the positions we took as people of the Niger Delta region, for us to have the NDDC. I know the same thing applies to how we were able to get the Ministry of Niger Delta, how the PIB bill came about, and the negotiations that went on for Yaradua to continue with the PIB and agree to 10% and all of that, that has been reduced to what we cannot even recognize. So definitely positions are given to people as a direct result of what the president considers compensation to whomever he thinks needs to be compensated for whatever it is that they would have done at the time of election for that political party or that president. So yes, some of those positions have been for that purpose. But you see, it is really just about, we have these people in position of whatever portfolios they've been given. Now, are they going to be able to do? We can't sit in the television studios and in our sitting rooms and ascertain to that. We will have to see what they do. And for me as a person, and having come this far in terms of agitating for justice in Nigeria, particularly in the Niger Delta and equity, I am not optimistic at all, and I don't think I have ever been optimistic from one government to the other, because we go from a situation where one president, the people say the next one coming cannot be worse than the last one. If we take the issue of removal of subsidy. Removal of subsidy, I mean, it came to a crisis in 2012 when the then president removed subsidy between the 31st of January and the December and the 1st of January. And we all know what subsequently happened. We had Occupy Nigeria. And at that time, the political party that emerged, eventually APC, and the people that are in APC now, the president himself, the past president, all of them were very much in the forefront of bringing Nigeria to a complete halt because of removal of subsidy. And might I add that subsidy in any shape or form, when it comes to subsidizing the petroleum products, there is nothing like subsidy. I've said in the past, and I maintain it. From my analysis, the issue of subsidy is the grandmother of corruption. There is no subsidy going on. How does it even make sense that a businessman takes out oil and brings it back, as he claims, in a form that you and I can buy it at the petrol station to use? And then the government turns around and says, you know, these people got this for free to go and sell it outside. And quite honestly, they are bringing back the finished product when we actually have 3 or 4 refineries dotted across Nigeria. And yet you are telling me that who are you subsidizing? You're not subsidizing Ankio Bricks. You're not subsidizing the woman in my village that doesn't have electricity provided either by the state or the local government. You're subsidizing the people, the men and women that claim to be selling this raw material they are taking from my region and selling it and bringing it back and selling it still back to me. And then you say that you're no, I'm not being subsidized. The people who are getting the subsidy, they are the ones that are being subsidized, and we don't actually need them to have petrol or kerosene or diesel. It's just another way of looting the resources in the country.
Fight for the job or not. During the screening of nominees, one senator actually said that it does not matter if the person who gets appointed for a position is qualified for that position or not, and that is why they have aides and people working under them. Then perhaps their role is going to be a supervisory role for those people that are under them, so they would be able to guide them, look over whatever they are doing. So perhaps we should not necessarily worry that some people that they use as some heads of these ministries are not really well vested in that field.
And it's for me, right? Hello? Hello? Oh my God. Hello?
Okay,
can you hear me?
Okay, I think I need to repeat the question. The question I asked was, during the screening of nominees, one of the senators said that it is not necessary that the person that would head a ministry be necessarily vast in that particular in that particular ministry, and that is the reason why they have many aides and people working under them, and their role is supposed to be supervisory. So do you think we still need to worry about perhaps the people who are there in that position? Perhaps do we still need to worry that maybe they are not vast, but then they have a lot of competent people working under them, and that lapses might not necessarily show?
In that case, why are we appointing the ministers? It's like saying a professor who is supposed to teach English is actually not able to speak English. But there are people around him that are able to speak English. So therefore, they will help him to teach his students. I mean, how does that even make sense? That can only make sense in the politics of Nigeria. It doesn't make sense anywhere else. I do not accept that, and I don't think that anybody who is reasonable is going to accept that. It's crazy even to think like that, and it's even crazier that we have someone who is a senator actually saying this, because he's actually admitted that he is incapable and does not qualify to be a senator. But you know what? He can get around him people that can tell him how to be a senator, and so therefore he now qualifies to be a senator. Will he allow a vulcanizer to operate on him when he needs an operation because the vulcanizer's uncle or kinsman is somehow a pharmacist or a nurse? It just, I mean, this is why Nigeria is not working. You can even imagine that type of thinking. I'm even ashamed, to be able to admit that as a Nigerian, this is the type of people that are put in positions to make decisions and for us. That you will have a minister of defense that is supposed to make critical decisions on security and on defense of the country. And he has no clue what it is to be a minister of defense. But guess what? His son is in the military, or his brother is a captain or a lieutenant. So therefore, he can become a minister of defense. No, it's not acceptable, and it's a shame.
They might not necessarily be qualified, but people around them, the ones who surround them, might be able to give them the help and guidance they need to run the ministry.
You see, Nigeria, with the way our leaders are taking us, is becoming a laughing stock before Committee of Nations. I say this with so much respect to the country, but not to the leaders. How do you gamble the lives of over 200 million on such a very degrading expression? It's even more insulting that it is coming from the highest chamber where we expect the best. It's not the best. Without mentioning names, I will want to make few references. One of our senior colleague at the bar, Elena Sick, there are 4 of them in the team, is to head aviation. All his professional life has been dedicated to the practice of law. Again, without advertising for any airline, there is also a distinguished Nigerian. But all his professional life has been dedicated to entrepreneurship in the aviation sector, to the extent that he has some of the most distinguished flights in that sector, and several times he had reasons, to come to the aid of the country for a rescue. if we are a nation considering the state of our economy and we want to man our frontiers with our finest minds and best hands, who amongst these distinguished gentlemen is a better fit for such a position, considering where we are? It shows that we are, again, going to gamble with the way this administration is starting. The other time you asked a question with regards to the pilfering of our natural resources, and you referenced gold. It's disheartening that up till and including this moment, no president had ever had the guts or manliness to set up a commission of inquiry to investigate all our natural resources, because the stealing and thievery of our resources is on industrial scale, and the worst is that it is going unchecked. So we have normalized it. In the long run, who are those who bear the brunt? It is we and our children. Like the statistics I stumbled on some time ago, children that will be born 30 years from now are already in debt by virtue of what our leaders have taken as loans. So it's shameful that one of our senators would be so bold to gamble the fate of a nation on such trajectory. But meanwhile, when he's ill and sick and needs medical attention, he does not risk his life on attending Nigeria hospitals. He goes abroad where even the foreign exchange we do not have, he risks it at the hands of foreign doctors to ensure that he gets the best. But when it comes to giving the people, the economy, the nation, what appears to be a minute of what they deserve, it is left open for gambling. It's shocking that this is where we are today as a people.
Definitely. These new ministers have their work